And it's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into some of the key issues in the spotlight right now. Now, the number of teenage felons aged 10 to 13 here in South Korea with no criminal responsibility has seen a steady rise in recent years. Now, this has prompted lawmakers and the Justice Ministry to discuss whether to lower the minimum age of criminal responsibility.
So is this the right move, or is it too harsh on children who may not be fully aware of the implications of their actions? To delve deeper into this, we connect with Cho Hee-kyung, professor at College of Law at Hongik University. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so first off, how much of an increase in the number of teenage felons below the age of criminal responsibility are we looking at right now? I mean, how serious is this situation?
So over the last 5 or so years, the number of juvenile offenders, those aged between 10 and 14, has increased by about 56%. So back in 2016, there were about 6,400 juvenile offenders who were essentially who had hearings before the family court and who were sent to detention centers. In the last year, it has increased to close to 10,000. So that is a significant increase over the years.
I mean, also what we've been seeing on the news as well is the severity of the crimes committed appears to be getting worse and worse for those under the minimum age. It does seem right to pass this law to decrease the age, but why would someone actually be against it?
Well, it's true that in the media, the more heinous crimes committed by these juvenile offenders are being reported. But the question is, what is the law for? Because simply increasing punishment for juvenile offenders has shown in a number of studies and research that it doesn't necessarily deter them from committing crimes, nor does it prevent recidivism. In fact, treating these juvenile offenders in the same way as adult offenders and sending them to same kind of prisons is actually, there's an increased chance of them turning into a life of crime rather than being rehabilitated and being able to rejoin the society. For young offenders especially, they are so much more easily influenced by external environment and other factors. And so it's really important to give them opportunity to be able to rehabilitate. And the concern is that just lowering the age and not actually improving other factors is going to simply cast them aside and not giving them an opportunity to rehabilitate.
All right, that's a great point there. Now, if they do decide to pass this law, they will have to decide what the new minimum age will be. And now there are talks of lowering it from 14 to 13 or even 14 to 12. So what do you believe should be done?
Well, it's not really the age. I think that's the key factor. The United Nations has certainly recommended that it shouldn't be lower than 12. And we also have to remember that just because they are not tried in the criminal law system, it doesn't mean that they escape liability altogether. Those juveniles between 10 and 14, they can be sent to detention centers for up to a year in order to be able to be rehabilitated. What we need to remember is that adolescent brains are different to adult brains. They have less ability for self-control. They are much more prone to act impulsively. They don't really have the ability to think about long-term consequences. And that becomes increasingly more difficult the younger the offenders are. And so it's not simply about lowering the age to whether 12 or 13, certainly not lower in my opinion, but what we can do to improve the environment of these young people, because very often these young people actually come from an environment of abuse or physical violence themselves. They're in fact victims of domestic abuse or broken homes and so forth. And so we really need to think about not just about increasing punishment and penalties for the juvenile offenders, but also how we can improve their situation so that they are not tempted to commit crimes.
Well, I mean, those that are kind of for the revision of this particular law is saying that, well, if you have the lowering of the age, it's going to scare these kids from kind of, conducting these criminal acts and so forth. So the big question remains, right? Do you think lowering the minimum age will actually result in fewer crimes being committed by these teens?
Right. So we are counting on the deterrence effect of lowering the age and subjecting them to greater punishment. But once again, lots of research have shown, not just in Korea, but in other countries, that simply increasing punishment does not work as deterrence. What we have to do is to improve the living conditions and other factors that influence these young people's lives. And that's really the only way that can effectively reduce their offense rate.
All right, thank you so much for your insights, Professor Cho. Looking forward to speaking to you again in the near future.
Thank you.